Yeah, today, basically, this is why we are here, the Export Accelerator Program, and basically to look at um, standards, compliance, and basically to see how this can help our businesses, to grow, but also to access markets. Because usually when we go into it, when we go into these things, there are challenges or bottlenecks that we experience that are even categorized as the non-tariff barriers. And many times they can come as a result of standards or conformity assessment systems, as we are going to see. So we're going to talk about them. We will start our discussion from the side of standards, because for your goods to access markets, to be certified, standards have to be available. That is the first part. So we will understand what standards are, how, why they're important, and so on and so forth. Then we'll go the other side. Yeah, for certification and some bit of tests. Okay, that's the presentation outline. Usually it's very important for us to talk about where we come from and about the institutions. I work with Uganda National Bureau of Standards as a senior standards officer. Now, about UNBS, we're a statutory organization that was established by the UNBS Act. Our mandate is basically formulation of national standards, like we'll see, promotion of the standards, and then implementation of the national standards, as we're also going to see through certification, testing, and so on and so forth. Our mission is to provide standards, measurements, and conformity assessment services for improved quality of life. And the vision is to be a leading institution of international repute in the provision of sustainable standardization services. Standardization services cover standards, certification, measurements like metrology, and then testing and inspection. Our values or core values are basically professionalism, customer focus, integrity, teamwork, and innovation. And this is broadly the key services: standards development and promotion, surveillance, which includes market surveillance, like products that are on the market, they have been imported or manufactured, the market. So we do market surveillance. This is like one of the implementation areas, and it is more of enforcement. We also do industrial for those manufacturers who are in process or going to get a Q mark or who haven't got, so that we ensure that everything is okay. So certification is basically where we are going to see some of what is important today. But here, we do product certification, system certification, process certification, and so on and so forth to demonstrate that your products meet requirements of standards. We do testing of products. We evaluate or we conduct an assessment for your product to ensure that it meets the requirements of, standards. That is a little bit of a detail. We'll look at it. I talked about legal metrology. These are measurements. We have to ensure that your products that are on the market have accurate measurements, whether water, whether food or any other food, steel bars, mention it, cups, and so on and so forth. Imports inspection, we do check what comes into the country. You realize there is a lot of importation, but we have to guarantee the safety and quality of the products that are imported to ensure that consumers of the products are safe. And also we do training in one or the other. We do train broadly in product certification and also in system certification like ISO 9000, 14,000, 45,000, and then 22. 22 is food safety management systems. The other one is OHS, and then the generic one is 9001. So I just wanted to quickly take us through what we basically do as UNBS. Broadly, standards development and promotion, like you've seen, surveillance, market and industrial, that's enforcement. We do certification that usually comes before surveillance. Okay, so let's go to standards compliance and basically how can this help us to ensure that we have business practices that are very, very competitive so that we have a comparative advantage and competitive advantage to access markets, whether local, regional, or international, and whether for MSMEs or for large companies. So I'm going to start by emphasizing the importance of laws, regulations, and then we'll come to standards. Now, ordinarily, people have different likes and dislikes. Every one of us, from an individual level, we have what we like and what we don't like. But also, we like to do things in different ways. Are we together on that? Don't we like to do things so many times in different ways? Hello? Okay. This can sometimes, let me say, can sometimes cause conflicts. Sometimes, let's say, can sometimes cause conflicts, or even many times maybe. So for people to live together in peace, there is need for control. Now, government provides this control by basically making laws, regulations, and standards. We can even start from policies. Policies up there, which are made by parliament, and laws. And then regulations that are basically made by ministries, and then standards that are made by standards development bodies like UNBS, or even any other. So the government uses these laws, regulations, and standards to protect its people. That is why laws, policies, I can also say, even regulations and standards are important. So now here, let's briefly look at types of laws. And here we have what they call international agreements. This can either come as a result of government, where government makes some agreements that every country has to follow. These are called international agreements. And if you look here, these can be in the form of conventions. Let's go here, conventions. Like, for instance, the one for ILO, International Labour Organization, the one that is responsible for people's safety and health. And then there can be some conventions on pesticides and pesticides use. How do we use pesticides? Do we use them anyhowly? Can't they come and contaminate our food? So there is a way. There are international conventions on pesticides. And then we have what they call the World Trade Organization, which has quite a number of agreements. It has an agreement on trade in goods. It has an agreement on trade in services, trade in intellectual property rights. There is an agreement on SPS and TBT. There is an agreement on, what they call trade remedies and countervailing measures, so on and so forth. But these are international agreements under the WTO, and that's where actually largely we also fall in terms of standards. Now, when we come to national laws, again, in government in each country makes its own laws. Laws are very important to govern the way things are done. These laws are for protecting its people, plants, animals, and the environment. Like, for instance, if we start from the Constitution, it's a law, and out of it can come out of it policies and so on and so forth. The law requires us to produce products, laws that do not harm people, animals, plants, and environment, so that we have products that are of good quality and that are safe for use. Okay, those are like national laws. Now, when we come to, let me just go back here. Like for us, UNBS has an act, and that's a kind of a law. And that law is what is important for the protection of the health and safety of consumers, protection of the environment, and the well-being of people in the country. That is the law that mandates us to develop standards, but that also mandates us to do certification and also to do enforcement and measurements, the ones I showed you. Actually, we also have another one they call the Weights and Measures Act. That Weights and Measures Act is a law that basically mandates UNBS to do verification of products to ensure that whatever you have on the market, let's say bread, if you say your bread is 1 kilogram, it is. If it is 500 grams, it is. And that goes on for many other things like liquids. Like, let me give you an example of soft drinks, the colas, the beverages. When you go to cosmetics, that's the same. And that should be the same for other pharmaceutical products that are on the market that are used for treatment and medicine. So that's the Weights and Measures Act. But then we also have another one for calibration. So that's where we can speak about laws, basically. But if you go beyond UNBS, you'll find that every other institution, let me give an example of maybe National Drug Authority. They also have laws. If you can go to any other institution, let me say, for instance, Petroleum Authority of Uganda, they also have laws that govern the sector in areas of petroleum production and so on, refining and so on and so forth. So those are national laws. Now, when we come to regulations are usually coming under laws to basically go for a specific area. And these ones are done to make it clear who will check products, like UNBS. So here, governments makes regulations. Regulations also tell what will be checked in the products. For instance, drinking water, you'll find there what they call certification regulations that will tell you how you go about on how to basically certify your product and what other requirements are just beyond to have your production in place. So the regulations also help us to understand what will be checked in the products. Okay. And this is basically written in the standards that I'm going to talk about after the regulations. Standards usually come in under the regulations. So standards also say how products have to be packed and labeled, apart from just checking or testing the requirements in a given product. Now, let me go to standards. However, before I go to standards, there is a question here. Just to everyone, in your life, how can you tell quality products? And they can also say what standards you know that are in your local language. Like for instance, here in Uganda, we can say Omtindo, Uganda. You can look at Rutoro. Chipimo may be in Swahili, but what standards are in your local language? These are very important things because for us to understand some of these things, while we develop standards that have language that is in English, we need people to understand them in all languages. So let's go together. Let's go while I set the stage for that. So laws and regulations normally say that a product must be of good quality and safe. Now, to make sure they are safe and quality, their characteristics are basically put together in standards. Okay? A law cannot come and speak as a standard. One time we were in a meeting and there were certain things we were looking at. Regulation, and someone was asking, what is a standard regulation? Which is which? What does the regulation do? And that was a very big challenge. This is why I'm saying to make sure that products are safe and are of good quality, their characteristics are put together in standards. We don't find this in regulations. So we can now say standards are made for products and services, and how products and services are made. For example, there are standards on how to maintain good hygiene in a food factory, or basically waste management. Or if you look at the other area for services, security services, you cannot find these things in a regulation. They are supposed to be given or prescribed in a given standard, depending on the product or service. So standards can give the properties of the products. They also show how the product may be packaged and labeled. Now, in terms of services, because services are intangible, standards can also describe a service. Let me give an example. You have a catering service. In that catering service, you do, go and prepare your food, but then you go and then supply that food maybe to a hotel. Okay, the food is ready-made. Now, that process for you to do that is what constitutes the service. Services usually focus on time, other aspects like empathy. They focus on behavioral issues. They also focus sometimes broadly on a given process for a product. Like in a hotel, if I look at the way you're handling things, I may not come and talk about the product, but I can just see the way you're doing that. And then I can tell that that is either good or bad service, and the way you respond to people. So services are intangible, but they can be, seen and be measured in one or the other, basing also on time. While we speak about products which are tangible. Okay? So now, the next thing is how standards are used in governance and regulation. Like we have seen throughout, we started from laws, regulations and standards. Now, that is what they call that's bit of the legislative. And here, when we look at legislative actions, this is what I've explained, laws or acts of parliament. You come to technical regulations which support the requirements of the laws, like this, given by standards, and then other actions which include rules, notices, orders, determinations, and warrants. Now, we have this other part of the non-legislative actions where you can, of course, focus on things like funding priorities. These are non-legislative. Someone can use this to fund this other side. Incentive systems, and you can see in standards like where SMEs are given, a certain kind of help in terms of incentives. These may not be things that are legislative. Awareness campaigns, you remember I talked about UNBS develops standards and promotes them. So this is that other part. You can go to public procurement and then codes of conduct. These are like non-legislative. Okay, now, sorry, am I going back up? I should go down. So let's now come here. Standards, sorry. I'm just going down, up, sorry. Okay, sorry. So further to that, standards show the characteristics of products and how the products are made. This helps improve quality of products and services. Okay, standards also help protect the consumer because this consumer who is purchasing the goods, whether here or outside, doesn't know anything. So standards can give what is required. Government can only accept quality products to be sold in the market. So, but this, through standards, helps protect the consumers. Standards also promote trade. If the product is of good quality, then you can sell it. This helps products to move from one place to another, even across borders for market access. Who makes standards? Okay. Of course, I know you will say it's UNBS, but let's speak very well. Standards may not only be made by UNBS. They're what they call private standards today, and they are made by private bodies. So standards may be set at different levels. For instance, an individual can set personal standards. A person can choose products that are most suitable for him or herself. You can set your standards. Standards can also be set at company levels. Any company can set standards. Okay, they can set standards on how you write, how you report, how you should behave, and so on and so forth. So companies can set standards for products they can accept also, but also they can set standards for raw materials they use. Most especially those who are in production, whether you're an MSME or a large company. They also set standards on how they make their products. In this way, companies make sure that the products they make or sell meet the laws, regulations, and standards. These kinds of products can get a good market. So standards can be set at different levels. Okay, individual, company, they can be corporate, they can be national, they can be international as we are going forward. Okay? So the other part of it, groups of companies or associations can make their own standards also. Then countries make national standards, just like I have said. Okay? These are normally made by the National Bureau of Standards, like here, or in this country have like the Uganda National Bureau of Standards. Now, when countries cooperate, for instance, as in the East African community, countries make standards together. Such standards are known as regional standards. And these, as we shall see forward, they basically help you to access a market. or when you're going beyond the borders. Now, when countries cooperate, okay, sometimes countries make standards together. These become international standards. And standards of the ISO, that is the International Organization for Standardization. By the way, ISO means equal. Whether you are from a least developed country or a developed country, you're equal in the way you put forward the position of the country when you're developing the standard. And IEC is International Electrotechnical Commission. This deals with many products that are basically electrotechnical. Okay, so here examples of international standards, we can have like ISO 9000. Other types of standards include ASME, American Society for Materials and Engineering, API ASME. We have hazard analysis, critical control points, Eurogap, Europe Gap. These are for those who are intend to access markets in Europe and for a specific area. For instance, it can be, organic products. And we have national standards that are developed by UNBS, which some of you or many of you may be very, very familiar. So let's now talk about the standards themselves. After looking at that landscape for where you have policies, acts, regulations, and standards. Now let's go to the main issue for standards themselves. So standards are just in a simple way, because we have a real technical definition, but just in a simple way, they are documents that give requirements, specifications, guidelines, or characteristics to consistently, the keyword is consistently, ensure that materials that you use in production, these can be raw materials, products, whether semi, intermediate, or final, processes that produce these products, like if you have a HACCP or HAZOP or anything, and services are fit for their purpose. They should be fit for their purpose so that the consumers are safe and the environment and everything. So here, when we come to a specification, it is a set of conditions for how materials and products are manufactured, measured, and tested. The specification is a range. If we are manufacturing cement and we want to know, let me say steel bars, and we want to ensure that these bars are fit for the purpose, we look at hardness. And hardness should be in a specific range. Let me say from 1 to 2. So that is a specification. It's a set condition for that material, which is a steel bar or product that is manufactured and measured or tested. Now, requirements in a standard is basically a necessity or prerequisite or obligatory. That means it is something that you have to comply with in a standard. Okay, let me say you are looking at this standard for maybe juices. It's inside there, okay, that you should meet. Let me say another one could be on maybe microbiology, just like yeast and molds, E. coli. That means it's a specific requirement that you should meet. Anything beyond that, the product is not acceptable. If it is heavy metals in it, there is a specific requirement set, and you need to meet that. Now, when we come to what they call guidelines, guidelines are not mandatory or are not like requirements. These are designed to streamline certain processes according to what the best practices are. I will give you an example. We have standards for business development services. From the perspective of services, These standards will help you to build capacity. Okay, they'll help you to build capacity. Okay, you'll find one that helps you to build internal capacity to become a good MSME. And then you'll find another guideline that helps you to become a business development service provider. It's okay, they are there, but they're not for this today. Now, when we come to other guidelines, you'll find the standards for guidelines on the environmental impact assessment. Now, you'll find that you're going to set up maybe a big factory or small entity, and it will have an impact on the environment. Then they will tell you, you have to ensure that you have done an EIA. Now, that EIA, there is a standard that gives guidelines on how to go about it. It's not mandatory, but it's for the practitioners who will help you to get an EIA certificate or license. Okay, and you'll find also guidelines for food production. There are those that are there. They're not mandatory, but they are to guide you to have a very good entity that can produce food, and that can be for any other product or service. Now, a code of practice is standard specifications up there used in a certain product or building or process. Let me give you an example. There are many codes of practice, but when you go, like, for instance, to the construction sector, you'll find codes of practices for, building. Even when you go to the side of electrical, and they can guide in the way you install cables and so on and so forth. Or it's about best practices. They give us what they call best practices in a given area. Even in food, you find them, and any other area. So those are codes of practice. They give best practices. They're even codes of practice for professionals. So like that. So that is it for what standards are. What is the importance of standards? So standards eliminate, when you have standards, they eliminate ambiguity in a business transaction because they have language, they have been developed based on best practice. And just like we've seen codes of practice guidelines, they show the characteristics of products and services, how the products are made. This helps improve quality of products. Standards also help protect the consumer. Okay, but also government can only accept quality products to be sold in the market. They base on standards. That's why the UNBS is there. And those are the benefits. They lead to lower costs of production by reducing redundancy. We are going to look at some things in that errors and time. Compliance by any business helps products, services, and personnel to cross borders. For instance, they can help you access markets, okay, for your products or service. Let's say goods, we generally know that we have maybe steel bars, cement, juices, but services, we can talk about professional services. Professional services for those who move, like engineers, lawyers, consultancies. Yeah, those are based on standards, by the way. Okay? And any other trades. Businesses that participate in standard development improve their efficiency, access markets, and remain competitive. Customers, because customers want products and services that are of high quality, reliable, consistent, and safe. Hence, reliance on quality and customer loyalty to an industry. So you get customers who are loyal to you because they trust your products. They have confidence in you. They also promote trade. For instance, if the product is of good quality, then you can sell it. This helps products to move from one place to another, even cross borders. Those are the benefits. Now, I want to speak about quality assurance after standards before I begin rolling out to certification and other things. Now, quality can be the degree of excellency or fit for purpose, or it can be the degree, the the degree or extent to which a product meets the requirements of a standard. Now, quality assurance is a very important important aspect in manufacturing, in production, in any business we do, even in services. So quality assurance are basically activities done by everyone to ensure production of quality products. And let's include services, because when you're consistent with your product and service, you're not going outside of the requirements. That means you have quality assurance. Now, why quality assurance? You are in business to make profits, not so. You want to make profits. So you can need to access markets to sell your products. However, I'm going to use a positive statement. I'm not going to say that. However, customers need good products. And by needing good products, of course, here are products which are of good quality and safe. Regulatory authorities have their requirements. And here, just to speak about regulatory requirements, let's speak about the context of UNBS. Okay? UNBS is a regulatory authority. So it requires that you fulfill requirements or meet requirements. And these requirements can be like, for instance, quality, which we have seen there, the degree of excellence, fitness for purpose. For those who produce products that do not have a lot of artificial flavors, there is focus on organic content. Now, to remain in your business, you are required to endeavor that you consistently, let me add those words which are not there, consistently and exceedingly satisfy both the customer and also fulfill regulatory requirements. Now, for you to be able to be consistently and exceedingly satisfying both the customer and also meeting regulatory requirements, this is why you need to do quality assurance. For instance, you're producing your juices. Today, they have met requirements. Tomorrow, they are failing requirements. The other day, they are meeting requirements. The other day, they are fulfilling requirements. That means that your quality assurance is not good enough. You don't have a quality control system in place. Focus on the quality of your raw materials, quality of your production process during pre-production, intermediate, and final production. Okay? That means there may be problems. And these problems will somehow see them when we talk about GMP and GHP somehow. But that is quality assurance. Quality assurance involves quality control. I've talked about it. It involves quality planning. You plan for your resources, okay? The resources that are the personnel. You can think about your infrastructure, like equipment, and also you can think about the kind of raw materials that you use. So once you're able to do them through checks and having documentation, then I think at some point you'll find that you have a quality assurance. And that means you will now have activities done by everyone to ensure production of, let me say, good quality products. Okay? I have spent some little bit of time here, but quality assurance is important in what we do. Okay. Now, for instance, let's look at in food, you ensure control of your quality from farm to table. You went and got your Irish potatoes and you want to ensure that you supply them when they do not have anything that can contaminate them or that can cause unsafe practices to humans. So you do what they call good agriculture practices. You perform them during on-farm production and you handle to produce good quality products. And the purpose is to ensure that you control contamination by these small organisms. They call germs. Sometimes we call them bacteria, but germs is quite a big thing. Physical damage, they don't look bad, for them to be acceptable. Someone doesn't throw them. They are not having cracks. They are not having anything that is bad. They are not contaminated with toxic chemicals and inorganic chemicals. That's just an example. So quality assurance is very, very pertinent in our businesses for us to be able to, have what is acceptable prior to, for it to be certified. Now let's look at GMPs. I've talked about good manufacturing. I started talking about good manufacturing practices. So good manufacturing practices, I've already talked about them some indirectly. Let me start by saying good manufacturing practices are practices that are done to ensure that your product remains acceptable. Okay? They are done to help to produce safe products. Like for instance, let me give you an example. You're milling peanut paste. Now, when you're milling peanut paste, okay, you're supposed to use equipment that does not contaminate peanuts. Okay? How? For instance, you can mill these peanuts and you find flying metals, some metals. Because the machine keeps milling, these metals keep getting crushed and mixed. The other part of it, you may be producing maize from maize grain, and it goes through a process. Now, you may find that the maize gets contaminated with dust, or even stones, or even metals. So the kind of manufacturing practices that you do are good manufacturing practices to ensure that your product is not having anything that can harm a person. And they help to produce safe products, quality products, high yields. You'll find less wastage. I'll speak about less wastage. When you produce a product that keeps getting contaminated because your production process is not operationally efficient and good and contaminates, that product will be rejected. So that means you have to take it back. And that will lead to increased waste. But if your production process is good enough and fit for purpose, then you'll have less wastage, even where you rework with your raw materials. They also involve obeying the laws and good business. They will lead to what they call good business profits. But largely, good manufacturing practices are very, very important in value addition. And here, some of the things you need to think about in terms of value addition will include things related to location. Here, the location is a very critical point. There are many things that we can go into if we go into some details of these standards, but let's just pick some of the important things. Location of your entity. The location here, the location where the business is affects the success of the business. And I'm going to explain that or elaborate. Business should be located where there is water supply. It should be free from garbage or even rotting rubbish. It is necessary to avoid flooding places. Avoid places with a lot of germs, insects, and rodents or birds. Avoid dirty places. Now, what does this mean? If I'm producing, like, for instance, water, and I'm in an area that is having a lot of pit latrines, it's likely that the water I'm producing will have a lot of germs or bacteria or microbiological organisms. Because there are many pit latrines, and remember, the water I'm getting it from a water source underground. And these pit latrines, some of them are dug in such a way that they touch water tables down there. So with pit latrines are a source of fecal contamination with some bacteria that can cause typhoid, that can cause cholera, and so on and so forth, and other problems. So location is very important, even flooding areas. Flooded areas, let me give you an example. Like today we have rains in Kampala or around Kampala or even the suburbs. Suppose you're in a suburb and in that suburb there is a lot of flooding. Still, that is the same problem. The kind of water, the way waste is dealt with can impact your product. Not even just for water alone, even your production itself. There can be what they call cross-contamination because of people who move around there. The environment itself, it may harbor pests, it may harbor even snakes and other things. So location is very, very important. We need to avoid places that are flooded, places we expect to have germs, insects, rodents, and birds. Rodents damage your products, or they even release material that causes contamination, even birds themselves. So think about location for if we want to have a good manufacturing practices with value addition. Let's look at the building itself. Your building should be of good size. It should be built well. It should be clean. And when we talk about cleanness, this is hygiene. Cleanness, we used to have our dad some years ago used to tell us that cleanliness is next to godliness. Of course, what he was saying, he was emphasizing the aspect of being very, very clean. So clean eliminates many hazards, eliminates germs. But when you have your building, it should be of good size for you to be able to produce. It should be built well. It should be clean. The compounds, outside structures, and pathways, for instance, roads should be clean. They should be kept free of birds and animals. Someone will ask, how do you chase away the things? This helps avoid dust and filth and harmful germs. Of course, some of those things are vectors. The roofs, walls, and floors should be well constructed. They should be cleanable. They should not harbor. They should not be a harborage for pests or a harborage for grit and dirt. Doors, windows, and window frames should be maintained in good condition and free from flaking paint. Doors, windows, and their frames should be kept clean. All the furniture and fittings should be solidly constructed and in good repair. Okay, so your building should be well constructed. These days, people use tiles. Tiles are affordable because we have now companies that manufacture them here. Okay, you can at least buy some tiles, or you can use terrazzo or even some other epoxy material that is cleanable, that can be used for construction. Storage. We need enough storage space. So enough storage space is important to keep product quality that is to prevent contamination. Stewards can be owned or hired. Like I know examples of friends who produce some products, but they get products from some place, somewhere. But when they're supposed to ensure that their products as raw materials they get from a place or which they hire are of enough space. Stores should achieve the following. Now, for instance, owned stores or hired stores should be kept in good hygienic condition. That means they should be clean, they should be free of dust, they should have extractors not to accumulate fumes and other odors inside. Different products should be kept separately. You cannot keep chemicals for spraying with the raw materials for your grains or something else. So for example, store oil away from flour in a bakery because oil can harbor, there can come things that feed on it, the germs, and they can end up in your products. Damaged products should be kept separately. You need to segregate them and make sure you keep them above the ground on pallets that are wooden or metallic in nature. Chemicals for cleaning should be kept in a separate area. That's what I said. This should be under key and lock. Not everyone should access them. The reason we are doing this is to prevent cross-contamination of your product. That's the raw material, or even your semi-finished, intermediate, or finished products. This will avoid accidental spillage of chemicals to products. Okay, let me jump this page. Okay, I made a mistake. So I've jumped because that I have already talked about it. I talked about standards and I'm not going to repeat myself. So after talking about compliance in terms of laws, regulations, and standards, and briefly bringing you some aspects of quality assurance, and also bringing in aspects of good manufacturing and good hygiene practices because they're very, very important. You find that that's what many of the standards talk about. And I'm going to, before I go to how standards are implemented, you'll find that there are specific standards for good manufacturing practices and good hygiene practices. Okay? And I have talked about them and why they are important. So now, that brings us to this aspect of how standards are implemented. The ones we are talking about for products and services, for good hygiene practices and good manufacturing practices. But there are many examples there, depending on the sector that you are in. For food, of course, food, we know it is something for human consumption. There is a lot of strictness in it. But for cement, you may stop at good manufacturing practices, or there's what they call good engineering practices. Okay? Because of the hazards that are inside there. So how are standards implemented? I'm going to speak about testing. Now, ordinarily, you have a small company or even a large company. Now, you start coming up with ways of how you can make your product. Let me say you're looking at a detergent, like soap detergent, and you have a small manufacturing area, a room, you have a storage area, like we have seen, and you have a production area, maybe you have a place for washrooms. Now, yes, you go ahead to say that, let me make formulations. Formulations are basically, you're saying, I'm going to add this and this and this to make my detergent. You purchase your raw materials, and then you mix them in the ratios you feel that are okay. And when you mix them, then you produce your product. Once you produce your product, then you are saying that now I want to make sure this product goes onto the market. Before it goes on the market, you don't know that your product needs to meet requirements of the standard. But along the way, you get to understand that your product needs to meet requirements for it to be sold on the market. Now, one of the things that you need to do is testing. You test your product. The testing, you want to know what is inside, and to ensure, like we saw requirements that are obligatory, that it is within the requirements set by the standard. Those requirements, if you look at soap, can be required, maybe looking at certain issues like, for instance, the content of fats, free fatty acids in it, because they are set by the standard for soap, bars, or if it is something like a juice, you want to ensure that the sugar is meeting the requirements of the standard. So here, what does that mean? You need to test the product. But from the side of UNBS, we can say UNBS conducts tests to ensure that a product meets requirements of a standard. And I've spoken about those requirements. Requirements are quite range. When you go to steel bars, like for instance, they'll tell you a bar of this length, a bar of this hardness. You'll find bars that are ribbed. You know those grooves that are there. Then you'll find bars that are not ribbed. All those you see must be meeting requirements. They will conduct hardness tests. Those tests are the ones to ensure that the steel bar can endure. It can help a building to have its integrity so that it doesn't crack. So the things you do involve examining physical characteristics, chemical composition, microbiological purity, and other properties. Dimensions, those are done for steel bars, even strength, electrical safety for electrical cables or anything, functionality, to see that something functions well, and then performance, to see that it can stay much longer in the same way. Let me give you an example. You've bought a blender, and that blender works today, then tomorrow it's not working. That means it has a problem with functionality or performance. In terms of functionality, today it is not slicing well, then tomorrow it is. Now, performance, it cannot cut the carrot. Okay? So those are things that are very critical and free from defects. This can be like food. I talked about earlier issues like on Irish potatoes that are not damaged, or maize that does not have what they call weevils. Okay? Or it is not cracked or anything. So this is what we can mean freedom from defects. So basically, testing is very, very important. You do an evaluation of your product to check specific ingredients and components in that product to see whether they are within the requirements of a standard. Okay? This goes to many products, even for fish. Fish, you can be supplying fish that is required to be fresh or dried fish. For fresh fish, it must not be rotten. It must not be contaminated with certain pesticides or chemicals, and like that, and so on and so forth. Then for dry fish, there are certain requirements for that fish that is to be broken. And that goes for other products like rice, grains, and so on and so forth, free from defects. So we need to conduct an evaluation for physical characteristics that we see, chemical compositions for things we don't see, microbiological purity or composition, and other relevant properties as explained. This is a very, very important and critical role in certification. We'll talk about that as I will speak about a little bit the detail for the certification process, because once we have our standards, once we have our products, for them to be certified, they have to be evaluated or examined through testing. Now, to obtain relevant certification for products needed for supply, let's say in this sector, oil and gas, testing and evaluation must be done against a specific Uganda standard. This often involves submitting products to UNBS accredited facilities. Accredited means these are labs that are recognized internationally. And here we can have certain areas like in food, chemistry, and engineering. For instance, materials that are for construction and electrical. And we also have national metrology labs for calibration of equipment. Let me say you are exporting grains to Congo. But when you're going to export grains to Congo, and you're supposed to measure this grain in tons, you need to have a weighing machine. That weighing machine, for it to give you accurate measurements, we need to ensure that it's calibrated. Okay, calibration is usually for commercial purposes. So we calibrate your equipment to ensure that it is within limits of accuracy. If it is outside the limits of accuracy, you will lose, and the one whom you're supplying or selling that product, that person will lose as well. So now, after testing, let's look at certification. Okay, you're already familiar that this standard I have tells me that these are requirements and the product should meet the requirements I have. Or the standard I have is a guideline, because that's clear with the standard. Or the standard I have is a code of practice, or it is a specification. It gives range for my product, depending on what I have. So now, the next thing you will say that I need to ensure that people trust my product that is on the market, that it is trustworthy, it is credible, and people have confidence that they will not be harmed. So you do certification. You have to undergo certification. And here, certification is assuring that the product that you're producing, process, that is what the product calls. Process, we usually here we look at, in terms of food, we can look at HACCP, what they call hazard analysis critical control points. They usually help us to deal with hazards. These can be physical, chemical, or anything else. Service or system like management system meets specific requirements. Certification plays a vital role in enhancing your supplier. You as a supplier. The UNBS product certification process involves several stages to ensure products meet the required standards for quality and safety. And the process includes application. You apply for certification once you are sure that your production, your quality assurance is good and your product is fit for purpose. So you will apply. It undergoes, you have to apply. It will be reviewed. You make a payment because it's not a free service. Okay. There will be an audit done. I have colleagues from certification who conduct audits. They evaluate your production process. Okay. And then if there are things that are not yet good, you will be guided. But once that process is finished, you will be issued a permit by UNBS, which is what they call the UNBS Q mark or distinctive mark, I can call it. That one, if you look at many of the products that are on the market that are certified, you'll always see a Q mark on it. And it is very specific for a company. So product certification, let's go into a bit of details. UNBS certifies your production process in place.
Mr. Kyazze, just
Yes,
letting
please.
you know that we've run out of time, and we also had wanted the participants to engage in a Q&A. So if you could wrap up in the next 5
I'm done.
minutes.
No, I'm done
Okay,
here.
perfect. All
This
right.
is the last one. So a product certification here is a process. UNBS certifies your production process to ensure that your products meet safety and quality requirements. And here are examples. There are many things, but I just gave mineral water, cement, textiles, foods. And here, it plays a vital role in value addition, just like we saw previously, where we had good manufacturing and good hygiene practices. Okay. And here, it's here you will be evaluated through testing, and there will be a verification that the product meets specific requirements to foster trust and market access. I think this one, management system, let me leave it for now. But here, when we look at process, I talked about it here. It can be related to your HACCP or good hygiene practice or good manufacturing practice or good engineering practices. And here, as I conclude, all regional offices, your application is reviewed for completeness to assess that the products are suitable for certification. Like I said, you will make a payment for your product to be tested. Now, this is usually done because it's critical, and auditing and other related services are paid to UNBS. However, prior to that, after that payment, an audit is conducted, and here UNBS conducts facility on-site assessment, and they will sample your product for testing to assess compliance with relevant standards, but they take you through an audit. An audit is like they have a checklist. Product evaluation, your products are evaluated against requirements of the relevant Uganda standard, like I said. Now, where there are things that are not good, they are identified. For instance, you may find that your requirements are out of range, so they are identified, and during the audit and testing, to address these non-conformities within a specified period. So the auditors will guide you. And once you have completed that process, then there will be a review and a decision. So here, once all requirements are met, the director or executive director UNBS grants the permit for you to use as a Q mark or distinctive mark on the product. And this permit is electronic, valid for 1 year, and it is issued to allow you to manufacture, to use the UNBS qualified mark. There is also here, when you see here, we have what they call HTTPS. Since this is where you register. So these are processes, but we are now automated. You no longer have to move a lot with paperwork, but this is a certification process. Even for testing, that's the same. So these are some of the things you need. You need a TIN mail, certificate of incorporation. Your business should be registered. You need a product process flow. to show how your product is manufactured. Simple one, from raw material to completion. You need a label and markings and a certificate of analysis for your product. So yeah, thank you very much. Let me stop there.
Amazing. So thank you so much, Mr. Kyazze, for that wonderful, insightful, detailed explanation, a session that you've delivered right there to help us understand these processes. You've highlighted quite a lot on the importances of law, and you've told us what laws, look at the national and international laws. You've talked about regulations and standards, and the difference. You've highlighted that very well. Wow. Interesting. I don't know, entrepreneurs, I don't know if you, like me, have gotten a little bit of exposure and an understanding on how we can prepare ourselves to penetrate local markets, of course, with quality products and of course, when we are ready locally and we've prepared ourselves locally, then it becomes a little bit easier to go global. And that's why Mr. Kyazze started out by saying it's an export accelerator program. And you actually reminded me is it next week? In 2 weeks' time, there's going to be a 3-day training. It's a boot camp for all entrepreneurs who are planning on exporting products into the global market. And so it's going to be the Export Accelerator program. It's a training. It's a 3-day training. Please pay. We already have quite a number of you that have expressed interest in this training. It will be at Enterprise Uganda, of course, in Butarika. Please pay and please don't miss out. We shall have experts like John Kyazze and people from URSB and other institutions who are partnering with us to ensure that they prepare you as entrepreneurs to be export ready. Mr. Kyazze, we want to give take a few minutes and just give entrepreneurs to ask their questions.
Yeah.
I'll start with Kwizera. His hand has been up. Kwizera, if you can unmute.
Okay.
Yes, good morning. I hope everyone can hear me.
We can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, my name is Kwizera Jonathan from Guza Insights. And I had 3 questions. The first one was, what does UNBS do for products which are not within its range? For example, the students who have innovations and then they are told UNBS doesn't have standards for them. Then the second one, I happen to have done a training. I was doing a training, I was a business advisor, and I met a woman selling G-nuts. And I wanted to understand how easy is it for SMEs to certify their products, because people are scared of certification because of money and all that. So how is it made easy for them to certify their products? And then my third question, for me, I do supplies. If someone wants a product, I look for it for them and get it to them. For example, here, I'm from Bara. If someone wanted Irish from Kabale or Chisoro, just get it for them and bring it for them. So my question is, which kind of certification do I need to go through for that? Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Kyazze, please come and just respond to those for now. You're muted, Mr. Kyazze. If you can just unmute.
Yeah, he asked that he has an innovation, a product, and that product, he has checked there is no standard, but he wants it to go on the market. So how can he be helped by UNBS? There's something I didn't talk about here. But UNBS, through that certification process, they've opened up through what they call something they call a pre-market approval. Pre-market approval looks at products that are on the market and they don't have standards, but people want to trade. So I think you basically write to UNBS, you write to the executive director, you put forward your issue that you have a product, you want to sell it on the market, but you've seen through that the product doesn't have a standard. Or sometimes they can even find you and you're selling in our surveillance. So there is that approach to allow people go into production so that their products, even if they may not, but while you are going along and there will be a standard, UNBS is moving, hand-holding hands with you up to the time when the standard is really readily available. The other thing, let me hope that's clear for you. So you will not be refused. It's a process, they will work with you. The other thing you said that you have a particular product, you get somewhere, but it seems like you are not the producer of that product. Let me say, but you get it and you add value and you want to be like the one who has produced that product. I think the key thing is, I can say, is that, like I said, there you need to have a registered business and an address and where you work. And where your entity is properly located, can be accessed. And yeah, if you add value, let me say you had maize grains and you got them from somewhere and you pack them and they can be sold. I think certification considers that it is considered because you are adding value. And the value is through maybe packaging or something else. I think that is acceptable. It is. The other question, I don't remember. What was the third question? What was your third question? Hello?
My third question was,
Yeah.
how is it easy for SMEs to certify their products?
Yeah.
Because people are scared
Yeah.
of the amount of certification.
No. I would like to tell you, actually, don't be scared. You see, one of the value propositions of UNBS today is to handhold MSMEs. In terms of fees, the fees have been tremendously reduced. They used to be, I think, 1 million and above, I think. But right now, to certify you as an MSME is around 570 or 600. It's quite a low figure. Okay. And then in terms of fear, there is no need to fear because there's, basics for MSMEs. We've talked about that part of business registration, where you need to have a team, where you need to have your trading license, and so on and so forth. Now, when it comes to issues where people usually fear is demonstrating that your product is consistently and exceedingly meeting requirements. Don't be scared by those words because that's what the consumer wants, to be guaranteed about safety and health. There are basic things that you can do. You see, I've talked about good hygiene practices. You see, I told you that your product, you need to ensure that you clean your ceilings, you clean your floors, you can use tiles, or you can use epoxy or anything. I've talked about good manufacturing practices, purchase equipment that is of good quality so that you don't contaminate products. These are things, of course, where you put in some bit of investment and you can be given time as long as you're working alongside UNBS. UNBS has a whole MSME desk to support where you can register yourself. The registration is not to cause you harm, but to work with you so that you're handheld to have your product reach or access the local market or even go beyond the borders. So there is a whole desk to help you. We have information on the website. You can start when you go to certification and you read that information. You can come to our offices in Belgrade and interact with someone there. He's called Abubakar. So it's not an issue for you to be scared to go to the market, but kindly be as open as possible. I know the scare is also about formalization. We've also come up with standards for business development services with guidelines to help you to build capacity, internal capacity. And I've briefly talked about the equipment. You do a diagnosis to check yourself, or someone else does it for you to see your position and how you can be fit to fit in the market to sell products out of your production. So please don't be scared. Our value proposition is to handhold you so that you can sell your product on the market. I think that's quite okay for now. Any other question?
Yes, thank you so much. I see David's hand is up. David, if you could unmute. David Baziwane, your hand is up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Thank
Yes,
you.
we can.
Mine is just to supplement what Jonas said. I've put in the comment that the beauty of now the UNBS standards is that since you're looking at exporter readiness, once UNBS says that your standard is okay, your product meets the said standard, then you are free to go to the markets around our region. Why? Whatever standards that UNBS gives you, so it harmonized. For example, if you want to sell something to Rwanda, you know which cartoon, and they'll ask you for their standard. The moment you have the UNBS standard, you are good to go. That's the first comment I wanted to make. Then the second comment I wanted to make was that when we were starting, he said standard should also be like fit for purpose, not necessarily safety. For example, if you are selling maize meal to Kenya, you should make sure that the maize meal you sell to Kenya is a bit coarse, not what the Ugandans want, like grade one. So standards should not only be looked at in terms of safety, but what your customer wants to test is also part of it. I thought I should clarify on those ones. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That is very,
But
very
also,
important. Yes, thank you.
I'll
Yes.
also like just to add on what Mr. Bazwana said. Just today we are here and we are talking about standards, compliance, certification, and so on under Enterprise Uganda. Actually, that is one of the reasons why we are here with Enterprise Uganda. You see where you're scared, just directly to approach UNBS. Then we have Enterprise Uganda here to bring you to help you to gel with UNBS, to go about those issues that usually scare people. Don't be scared about requirements. No. But let me stop there for now.
Thank you so much again, Mr. Kyazze. Thank you for now, ladies and gentlemen, our time is far spent and we want to respect the issue of time. I know the questions are many, but please go ahead and register for the Export Accelerator Program. It will help prepare you to be export ready. It's a 3-day program. The link is in the chat. Please feel free to reach out. And if you're not part of the Enterprise Uganda pages, please join them, because there we usually send updates of what is happening, and this could benefit you as an entrepreneur. For the rest, if you want to reach out to Mr. Kyazze, I'm going to request you to put your number in the chat, and then people will reach out for consultancy. And please, if you call him for consultancy, consultants, they don't work for free. So please engage him, but also please take care of him so that other people can benefit from him. And so thank you so much, Mr. Kyazze, for the insightful presentation you've given us, and for helping us understand what it takes to be export ready and how we can prepare ourselves for the global markets. Today's discussion has really reminded us that standards are really not simply about compliance only, they're about building systems and guaranteeing quality, reliability, and trust in the marketplace. And David also added fit for purpose. Those things help us help us, help the public gain confidence in what we're putting out there. And so for enterprises and entrepreneurs that aspire to grow beyond local markets and strengthening systems, it's no longer optional. It's now essential. We need to be intentional about preparing ourselves, strengthening systems so that we can penetrate not only the global and regional markets, but also the international markets. And so on behalf of Enterprise Uganda, I'd like to thank our guest speaker. Please go in the chat, give him some hand claps for sharing his expertise. And also, we appreciate all the entrepreneurs who have joined this session and actively engaged in this masterclass. We encourage you to continue strengthening your businesses by adopting standards that position your product competitively in both regional and international markets. Thank you all for being part of today's session. We shall be here next week, same time, same place.